All right. Hey, Joe Devine, thank you a ton for being here. Could you introduce yourself before we get started?
I could. Can
You,
you can you make sure that I don't introduce myself for 15 minutes? I have a
there are limits to even my power, but give it a
all
go.
right. Uh, so I manage channel at Emarsys, an SAP company. That's partnerships and alliances. I'm focused on primarily agencies and SIs, but I also spend a good amount of time within the larger ISV ecosystem, technology partners. Been here almost 6 years. I've helped onboard a ton of technology partners, building integrations, building go-to-market strategy, and now collaborating closely with agencies and SIs, focused on kind of the larger ecosystem, but also specific to Emarsys deployment, Emarsys implementation, standing up technology, etc. I'm a tech guy from way back.
Yeah.
Wanted to originally, wrench on the gear that runs the internet. I don't want to date myself, but the late 90s, let's say.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
Network engineer, from education and trade, working in network operation centers and co-location facilities.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I decided I wanted to talk to people and not be, in a colo Saturday night at midnight doing updates on servers.
sure.
Then have worn many hats in the MarTech space. Um, I was an IT director for a while, an account director, a success manager. I was a solution consultant for ages, and then also a sales executive, and now running channel at Emarsys.
That's awesome. That was pretty brief, all things considered, just given the number of hats you've worn. And I like that you brought it back to like your career, going back to the point where we thought about where the internet was, if that makes sense. Like obviously cloud computing is still in places, but the whole idea is to not think about it quite so much. But like the materiality of the stuff you're working with, I feel like is something you keep in the back of your head. And based on, the ways we've worked together, SI to vendor or what have you, that's come through, right? Like you keep it real, Joe, and I appreciate that about you.
I try, Drew. I try.
We're here today to talk about not beard care. Unfortunately, as someone might think if they looked at this at a thumbnail of this, maybe another time. Are you an oil guy, a beard butter guy? No, I said another time, another time. We're here actually to talk about Adobe and Emarsys. And I mean, like, let's keep it at Emarsys first, right? Like, I think there's kind of an interesting thing happening in the market where a bunch of Adobe customers are looking at Emarsys for marketing. We can talk about why and all of that. I had a previous conversation with Megan on the Emarsys side, which we'll link to, that goes into that a little bit. And I think we wanted to get into more detail. But let's set the table first. What do you think, as someone who goes way back and has worn all those hats, what do you think makes Emarsys different from sort of a tech stack or even like a philosophical perspective?
I've been asked this question a few times, many times even, and I always like to say, when 6 years ago, when I decided to come to Emarsys, I made that decision primarily due to the technology. We are cloud native, digital first, born in the cloud, um, and we've been at it for 20 years, which 20 years is a long time for a piece of
It is.
technology to be growing and evolving. We weren't, whatever, 10, 15 years ago, acquired and blended into some, new stack of tech, but organically grown, and we continue to innovate. We have a massive R&D team. I think it's the stat is like 25 cents of every dollar that we make in revenue, we invest back into the platform.
Mm,
And that technology is a mix of the platform itself, the feature functionality, but equally as such, it's the ecosystem in which Emarsys operates. And
mm.
we know that marketing doesn't happen in a bubble. Marketing happens alongside a bunch of different technologies in a chosen stack or an unchosen stack, a stack you inherited and you must operate within. Um, and it is the foundational technology at Emarsys that I think sets us apart. And the fact that we've been able to grow this platform organically with a focus on our customers and what they need, what they want to achieve. And we've been able to dial that into results driven solutions. And for most of our customers, results are revenue growth. So how do we drive revenue with technology from a marketing perspective? In most of the cases, you can find all that like value proposition on the website, but generally it's, understanding your audience, understanding how to personalize, get the right message in front of the right person at the right time, and then how that kind of can orchestrate that customer journey. And Emarsys is just very good at doing that and doing that within that larger ecosystem of technology that a customer of Emarsys might have.
I appreciate that you brought it back to the history of Emarsys because I think that is why, right? Again, like making it material. Emarsys is very much one-stop shopping for a lot of functions. I talked about this with Megan a bit, but from contact management to campaign planning to campaign execution, multi-channel, these are things that historically have been multiple solutions that in some cases sort of still are multiple solutions, even if they're all under the same banner for other companies, right? Emarsys, because, and to be clear, Emarsys was acquired by SAP, but Emarsys isn't built the way it's built because of acquisition. All of this stuff kind of happened before that. And even after that, Emarsys has continued to grow pretty organically.
Emarsys, it wasn't built the way it's built because of acquisition, but rather the flip side. Emarsys was
Mm.
acquired because of the way it was built.
Totally, totally. Yeah, that's well put. That's well put. So I mean that stands out in the market, I think. And speaking as an SI, this is something that people react to all the time. When people see Emarsys for the first time, certainly they react to like, the actual features in it and ease of use and all that good stuff for sure. But I think something we hear a lot is like, oh, this is three solutions we're using today in one. Right? Like we are using a whole bunch of different technologies and having to jump from place to place. This puts all of those things in one single dashboard, one pane of glass is kind of the trendy term, right? And I think that does make Emarsys stand out. And I mean, candidly, we're here to like contrast that a little bit with what's going on with Adobe. You at Emarsys are very classy and tend not to talk smack, and I am not here to talk smack either, right? Just to talk about what we're seeing in the ecosystem. But I think if folks are not used to hearing Emarsys folks talk about this, it's because you don't really tend to hit below the belt in marketing terminology or like tactics. Is that fair to say?
It's definitely fair to say. And I personally, like to position our technology based on its functionality, based on its ability to succeed. We sell on the success of our platform, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily on the shortcomings of other platforms or the competition.
Yeah, that's
But
fair. That's
I'm
fair.
happy to come and at least point out maybe differences, or to be fair, how we can coexist in a
Totally.
stack of technology. Because, and this is funny, I sometimes have this internal discussion with folks at Emarsys, because we can be somewhat of a one size fits all platform and we can do so much. The blinders can be put on and we can be a
Mm-hmm.
little myopic and we can think of ourselves as operating in a bubble. But when a customer chooses to purchase and invest in a Emarsys, it's never installed in a bubble. It's installed alongside plenty of other tech. The goal is hopefully to integrate and kind of communicate with the rest of that stack to make a marketer's life easier, to make
Absolutely.
IT's lives easier, and then ultimately to kind of activate and amplify that stack to drive revenue results.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think let's talk a little bit about how that fits in with a few other technologies. And we
Sure.
should say this is true in-house with SAP tech as well. We're talking to a fair few customers who are using SAP Marketing Cloud, which is a product that is getting discontinued. I'm not breaking news here. And it's sort of a natural fit to at least look at Emarsys, but it's a little bit different than what you're talking about in the sense that it's getting discontinued. So coexistence isn't really on the table, right? You are then talking about something of a lift and shift. When we talk about Adobe, coexistence is absolutely on the table. And that's kind of what's interesting because when we say Adobe, we don't really mean the same thing as when we say Emarsys, right? It's closer to when we say SAP. It's an enormous sort of collection, constellation, family, ecosystem of different
Absolutely.
technologies.
One good example, when I first got my start in MarTech, I went to a little conference called Magento Imagine.
Mm,
Magento, historically healthy, vibrant e-commerce ecosystem, went through a few acquisitions over the years, and now owned by Adobe
mm-hmm.
Commerce.
Yeah.
We have a healthy Magento or Adobe Commerce integration. Lots of customers who use it. We operate side by side with that piece of technology and amplify results. And it's important to have that. And we do it very well. There's other pieces of Adobe tech that you're more familiar with than I am. So to be fair, I'd like to flip this on its head and ask you a question.
Do it, yeah.
When you think of the Adobe stack and what a customer is putting in place to achieve MarTech results, what does that kind of or vertical stack look like?
That's a great question. Okay, so there are a few different pieces. There is what I would think of as the Adobe CDP piece, right, which is like contact management, closer to again what SAP might have on the artist formerly known as Gigya, the CD cloud data platform, cloud data solutions, various things like that. Then you've got stuff like Adobe Target, which is really based around building audiences, right, absorbing information about different folks and deciding how they should be grouped. Then you've got the Adobe marketing stack. And this is, again, what's different from Emarsys is you are still sort of talking about a stack. There are multiple solutions in play here. One is called Adobe Campaign, and even that is incorrect. Adobe Campaign is actually multiple things under a big umbrella, partly because of acquisition, partly because of just development over time. The one that is called Adobe Campaign Standard is currently in the process of getting sunsetted, kind of like SAP Marketing Cloud. Adobe Campaign Classic is still going to stay in the picture. As the name implies, it's sort of an older school solution. It's extremely feature rich, but maybe isn't quite as like user friendly as you might expect something made later to be. To sort of address that, there's also in Adobe's current cloud ecosystem another newer solution called Adobe Journey Optimizer. It is, again, quite slick, and it's built into other stuff you might be using if you are using the overall Adobe Marketing Cloud. But it's a newer product. It's not as full featured as Adobe Campaign Classic. Therefore, folks who want to do everything end to end tend to use both, or really all of the above. A CDP, potentially Adobe Target, Adobe Campaign staying in the picture, and Adobe Journey Optimizer entering the picture. So you've got 3, maybe 4 solutions that may need to be integrated. If you're moving off of Adobe Campaign Standard and then shifting to Classic and or Journey Optimizer, that's a bit of a data migration discussion. That's a bit of a process optimization discussion, a change management discussion, actually somewhat similar to what you would need to do if you were going to keep maybe Adobe Target, certainly Adobe CDP in the picture, but have Emarsys play the role that Campaign and or Journey Optimizer are playing. So we've heard a few customers in the wild say that Emarsys kind of acts like Campaign and Journey Optimizer together as one product. It does a lot of the same things that each of those products do, but in sort of a unified, holistic way, which can in some cases save marketers a lot of cycles as far as moving data from place to place and all of that.
Thank you for that.
Was that helpful? Or
It
did that
was.
only
It
confuse
was.
matters more? Okay.
I've never worked for Adobe. We've absolutely kind of, operated in that space for a long time, possibly compete against them at times, sure.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But I am not an expert on that. But you do make an interesting point, and I'll double down on kind of maybe why or how Emarsys could
Yeah.
step in, to play its role. So it's funny, the folks at Forrester, Gartner, other outfits run their, various wave reports and magic quadrants, etc. And we end up showing up in multiple
Mm-hmm.
because of the breadth of our platform. It's both horizontally wide with some feature functionality across some of the things you talked about: contact management, audiences and segments, activation of that data, automation of that data, and then actual channel execution, deploying that messaging, deploying across many channels. We show up in the personalization magic quadrant for Gartner, which we're a leader, top performer there.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of our ability, I think, to do all of this under one roof that allows us to shine in the eyes of these consultants and various outfits.
I think that's
We
accurate.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah and I guess I'd finish that thought in that doesn't typically happen in a vacuum. It shouldn't happen
Mm-hmm.
in a vacuum. If you are a $50 million e-com retailer and you don't have a complex stack of technology driving that beyond your e-com platform, sure, you might only need us. But if
Sure.
you are a large enterprise with many business units, with varying sales channels, with possibly wholesale and direct to consumer, and brick and mortar, you've got a lot of tech. And the ability for us to operate with an agnostic CDP, let's say, or you know some sort of contact identity and access management type platform, and or data warehouses, data lakes, working with IT and data science and data governance, working with marketing when it comes to first party data and managing all that. We're going to have to interoperate. And
Hmm.
one of the things that allows Emarsys to do that is the extensibility of the platform. Our ability to connect to many disparate sources of data in many different ways. Old school web service APIs. They're common, they're used frequently. We've got a lot of them. And you can build a ton of cool solutions on top of that. But like I said earlier in your question, you asked, why did I come to Emarsys? I came for the tech. Well, we have
Hmm.
this other cool piece of technology that allows us to directly connect to various data warehouses and data sources. It could be Redshift, or it could be something on the Microsoft side. It could be Snowflake, and we can connect to that data directly, consume it, activate that data, put it in the hands of the marketer, and make it easy to access and then act upon. And both of those scenarios, API or direct connections to these data lakes, add value. But we also have things like a mobile SDK, which allows us to kind of integrate with a mobile app. So you got web push, in-app messaging, in-app behavioral data, and then the ability to respond and react to behaviors inside those apps, and then change the customer experience. Now, that's again all happening with different pieces of technology.
Hmm.
And we do very well helping a customer navigate that complexity with our tech. Would you
I think that's
agree to that at
extremely
least,
right.
Drew?
Yeah, no, I totally agree to that. I totally agree to that. And I think that's where that coexistence piece comes in, right? Because again, there are many roads to the same result. Like I think sometimes the way this gets framed is like, what can you do with Emarsys as your marketing stack that you categorically cannot do with Adobe?
Mm.
And I think there are answers to that question, and we can get into it. I don't mean to dodge it, but it's also like not the most important question in some ways, because often you can achieve the same end. It's just how many steps are you talking about? What do you have to give up in terms of real time? Right? Do you have to choose whether a given scenario is fully batch, as in the audience gets built elsewhere and then brought into the executing system, versus real time, as in you're reading data and making decisions based on purchase history or whatever? I think Emarsys, to your point, means you don't always have to choose. You can bring in an audience via batch. And then use that as a segment. Audience being an Adobe term, segment being an Emarsys term, right? But then you can also use an Emarsys term smart insights to say, again, read purchase history or things like that. And then to your Redshift example, you can also bring in relational data, right? Emarsys is built to not make you commit to just one of these options, kind of from the ground up. And I think that's why in the wild, we've sometimes seen people who really have invested a lot in an Adobe CDP and have every intention of keeping it, but find that they get more out of that investment if they consider Emarsys as a marketing platform. Because to your point, it isn't just a question of being all in on one monolithic stack. It's often a question of, if they have an Adobe CDP, but they also have SAP Commerce Cloud. Emarsys integrates very elegantly with SAP Commerce Cloud, so it can sort of be the single point of integration for those things. Likewise for Shopify, Emarsys has some built-in tactics for both. Tactics, for those who don't know, are pre-built automation journeys, as they're called, that let you orchestrate exactly who's getting contacted and when and how they get contacted. Whole other topic. But if all of those things are in play, and for an enterprise of a certain scale, they almost certainly are, or that number of things almost certainly is, that's where Emarsys we found makes a ton of sense, and where it's a little bit slept on, frankly, in North America. I think there's a fair few big businesses who are surprised to see just how robust it is. They haven't really seen it demoed. It's maybe not on their radar as much as your Adobes or your Salesforces or things like that. And it turns out to be a very pleasant surprise, I think, for folks who are used to having to orchestrate those processes in a less elegant way.
It's funny, the last point. we don't have as much name recognition in North America.
Hmm.
We've, we historically, we were founded in EMEA. That's true. That's, we're out of Austria originally, and now part of SAP, which is a German company.
Hmm.
Um, Dave Littlechild, who runs channel and partnerships in at Emarsys globally, he does tell a little anecdote about coming to Emarsys years ago and going to like his first conference and meeting, old friends and colleagues from the industry. And he says, "I'm at Emarsys now," and the joke is that everyone would ask him, "What is that? A medical device company?
Yeah,
who is
yeah,
this Emarsys?" And it's funny. It actually Emarsys stands for e-marketing system.
right, right.
Emarsys, if you didn't know. But it, it, when you do get a look at Emarsys, yes, and like I said, I'm a tech guy. I came here for the tech. It is a
Mhm.
really solid platform. And you mentioned Adobe, and I know this conversation came about because of that, but you could swap out the Adobe name with almost any other marketing stack that's out there. Salesforce or Oracle. And here in North America, it is a very busy and crowded MarTech ecosystem.
Mhm.
You think about Scott Brinker and Chief MarTech and his like MarTech 1000, MarTech 5000. Now I think it's like the MarTech 12,000 and all that tech across the space.
Mhm.
What do you choose or what do you need? You've got stuff that you are all in on as a customer that is driving business results. I think that from my point of view, thinking about marketing and how marketing can amplify investments alongside these other pieces of tech that you're fully supporting and intend to keep and run. The story's clear, and I'm looking forward to hopefully someone watching this video says, you know what, let's take a look at it. I want to see what you
Mhm.
mean by this. How can we amplify an Adobe CDP? How can we make your life as a marketer easy when you've chosen a complete Salesforce stack, but maybe you're not happy with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, or
Sure.
maybe you're an Oracle outfit and Responses isn't working for you anymore. Um, there's something new and better
Yeah.
and different to take a look at.
There come these moments where it just makes sense to take a look. We've talked about a few, right? SAP Marketing Cloud getting discontinued. If you're on SAP Marketing Cloud, you've got to think about where to go next. I think of the sunsetting of Adobe Campaign Standard to be a similar moment, right? You could totally just go to Campaign Classic, AJO, some combination of the two, but it's a really good moment to look around. And those are just examples that are top of mind right now because they're happening right now, but it happens with any technology. It's worth re-examining exactly what you're doing and whether you're getting the most out of any given piece of tech you're using, and most importantly, out of the whole stack. Are you meeting the goals you're trying to meet?
It happens, yes, in our space a lot, and I think we are uniquely poised on July 30th, 2024, to be a platform that you should be evaluating as these deprecations occur and these sunsets occur. I mean, not long ago it was Bronto.
Sure,
It
totally,
ended up
totally.
getting gobbled up by NetSuite, and then NetSuite was purchased by Oracle, and then Oracle decided Bronto no longer. Well, there were hundreds and hundreds of customers who needed to look for something different.
Yeah,
And if that's the same case now with Adobe, Emarsys is definitely should definitely be on the list of a platform to at least kick the tires and take a peek.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, I mean, speaking as an SI, challenge us on this, right? Get in touch if you think if you think you've got a different point of view as far as like going all in on a single stack. We're always happy to hear you out. We've definitely seen people have success with that. If you've got some remarkably heterodox combination of solutions that we haven't even alluded to here, let me know. We'd be happy to talk about it. Uh, let's figure it out.
I think great sentiment. On that, I do want to chat quickly about the Shopify ecosystem
Please, yeah.
and and some what I would consider maybe startup technology. There's a lot of really good tech in that space, and there's a lot of companies who've adopted that methodology of sorts to build out a tech stack. I think what you find is as you grow and evolve as a company, as an organization, your needs change
Mm,
and you have more sophisticated requirements. You have more mission critical requirements that can't stop, that need to be up and running. You have compliance requirements that are important. And so you kind of grow and evolve as an organization. In the enterprise space where we're primarily positioned, there aren't that many other options beyond the monolithic stack.
Mm, mm.
And that's
Yeah.
another reason why you should definitely be giving Emarsys, you know, a
Yeah.
good a good review of sorts.
That's such a good point. Yeah. Not a good review isn't 5 stars
No,
necessarily.
no,
Although
no.
if you like it, go ahead. But a
A
good review in
look,
terms of a look, a fair shake.
a fair
Yeah, and
shake.
I think that's you're making an important point because like it's you got monoliths and then often posed as the other pole, the other side of the coin, the opposite is composability, right? Like you'll just snap everything together. Everything will be best of breed. This has sort of been Commerce Tools' message. And it makes sense so long as you've got a really mature tech team to actually make all of those connections, right? Because the thing about picking the best of breed is that, the Mock Alliance is trying to change this to a certain degree. That's the mission statement anyway. But day one, 8 o'clock, you don't necessarily have any pre built connections between those things. So there's a balance, I think, to be struck between, looking at those monolithic structures that are built up and are intended to be snapped together. Whether they're designed to be snapped together, I think, is an important distinction for us tech folks. Uh, there's a balance to be struck between that and between each thing being best of breed. Because again, the thing you should always have in your head is what does the overall stack look like? Having the best piece of MarTech under the sun is great, but it matters less than it should if it's not integrated with the systems where the data is, if it's not hitting the channels that you need to hit. So I think that holistic discussion is the really important part of giving Emarsys, a look. Or whatever technology you think might get you to a better place, but again, I think Emarsys is a slept on one as far as what can get you there in this region, less slept on in Europe.
When we meet potential customers and we dig into their requirements and we hear from them what's most important, we do discovery, you know, we do a lot of that, customer after
Mm-hmm.
customer after customer, and there are definitely themes. Um, and we sculpt we've sculpted our roadmap and the product to address those over time. But there is
Mm-hmm.
a theme that has existed for 10 years, probably, about siloed data. And to your point,
Mm-hmm.
if you have the strongest of tech teams and developers on staff whose primary remit is to connect data and develop solutions on your behalf as a marketer, kudos to you, first of all, for having that resource, because rarely is that the case. Now, maybe brands that are digital first and born in the cloud themselves. I think of maybe Amazon, obviously.
They have their
You
own
know,
stack, stem to stern, for those who
I
don't know.
mean,
So it's a different situation. Yeah. And they have the money to
completely,
support it. Yeah.
yeah, completely different. But there are smaller outfits that are similar, that are really technology focused brands who are, let's say, selling a different type of product, but they're
Hmm.
steeped in technology. Maybe we're not for you, fair, but they're probably using a homegrown system and struggling equally with it. But anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is most marketers will say we have siloed data. It's difficult to get at that data, and or we have strained relationships with IT because of this chasm between our requirements to use the data and the access to it. We hear it all the time, and I think I don't want to tell the same story over and over again with different words, but it is ultimately where our platform thrives, and it I think just underscores the assumption coming into this that could Emarsys be effective in a monolithic stack with other Adobe technology? Absolutely. We would be or could be the plumbing, uh, the glue that pulls some of that disparate technology together. And chances are, it's not just Adobe in that stack either. I mean, you might have an AS400 sitting in a dusty
There's a
closet
lot of
somewhere.
AS400 sitting around, Joe. Let me tell you. Let me tell you.
Now, let's not date myself, but I learned CL programming in school
Mm-hmm.
moons and moons ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We could connect to that. there's so many different interesting pieces of tech out there. I just had a customer who's doing a large amount of transactional notification via
Mm.
SMS, and they use a complete separate third party platform connected to another separate data database that drives that entire notification piece, and marketing has no ability to manage it. And I'm just like, there's a better way. And that it's those types of use cases that I think an organization will find refreshing and a bit of, a breath of fresh air when they take a look at how Emarsys can solve some of those complex use cases and business requirements.
This is a pattern that doesn't get talked about enough. You said it better than I did because I was sort of contrasting the being all in on a monolith versus picking the best of breed and rolling your own. And those are, of course, two things that exist. But I think like a really commonly successful approach is to be mostly in on a monolith, but pick one technology that suits your needs better. We see this all the time with folks who are mostly all in on the SAP stack. They've got ECC or S4 or RISE as their ERP. They've got SAP Marketing Cloud or Emarsys as their piece of MarTech. They've got SAP Commerce Cloud as their commerce engine. Perhaps they've got CDC for customer data, but they want to use a different front end, right? They want to perhaps take a look at Alakai, right? Like SAP Commerce Cloud is a headless solution. You can do that. You don't have to use the stock front end. You can pop a different one in there. That, where does that fit into this taxonomy that I was trying to put forth? Is that roll your own or is that monolith? Well, it's neither, right? It's what you're talking about. You have a stack, you like it, you're getting a lot of value out of it, but there's something where your needs aren't being met. So you sub in something that meets your needs better. Similarly, you can be all in on Adobe. You can have Adobe Experience Manager in place, the CDP, the target, the campaign, the journey optimizer stuff we've been talking about, right? But maybe it's worth asking whether one of those parts could or should get switched out. It doesn't mean you're losing your investment. Often it means you're getting more out of your investment, actually, because you're keeping the parts that work well for you and considering an alternative to the ones that work less well for you or that are not optimal or that you simply haven't refreshed in a while. Just asking the question can be really important and powerful because, to your point, you can often get into a pattern where IT becomes responsible for stuff that marketers should be responsible for. Everything becomes a technical exercise, and that doesn't leave folks any room to just be inventive. And that can be sort of, there can be a lot of downstream effects there. It can become a real drag on the organization. So being nimble and creative and asking the question is a really good way to get yourself out of that particular problem.
Well said.
You
I
too.
think I and we're on this meeting, having this discussion, recording this content for a reason. Everything you said is true, regardless of waves in the ecosystem. Regardless
Totally.
of
Totally.
the timeliness of certain reasons to act. And like Exact Target was purchased by Salesforce many, many moons ago, and there are reasons why you might think about switching that stack. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're, you know, currently on that and doing okay, is there an impetus to change? Probably not, maybe not. But we're not necessarily here to talk about that audience.
Right.
Today,
Right.
Adobe's telling folks that they need to migrate from a particular piece of technology. And if
Right.
you're already out there having to do a forklift move from one to the other, I think the point is maybe, yeah, throw a few others in the mix and hopefully it's a Emarsys. And I know that you will be pleasantly surprised if you take a peek. I am
I think that's
obviously
well
a
said.
little biased, but I, the worst thing for me personally is to think about a customer buying the wrong technology
Mm-hmm.
and then experiencing the types of pains that we hear when they come knocking on our front door to evaluate us. I don't want the wrong customer on Emarsys. And so I can confidently say, if you're aligned with the types of similar customers that are being successful on Emarsys, think of large branded manufacturers who have direct to consumer, who have brick and mortar, who also sell a ton through wholesale, the Pumas of the world,
Mm-hmm.
Gibson Guitar, kind of marquee customers of Emarsys, or you're a large brick and mortar grocery store and you're using what I would like to call some legacy technology. No offense
Delicately
to the
said. Yeah.
no
Yeah.
offense to the grocery industry.
Well, to be fair, it's because the vertical has extremely specific requirements. Like it
Well,
happens for a good reason.
and they've been around since more or less the dawn of time.
Yeah.
So there has been a unique and specific ecosystem that has surrounded grocery for a long time.
Totally. Totally.
Things are changing, things are evolving. There is technology now at your fingertips that you can adopt and execute upon that doesn't need to be a part of that kind of old guard grocery ecosystem. And then there's plenty of others. I think of travel and entertainment. I think of, you know, food and bev, CPG, brands that I think are still in their infancy when it comes to digital marketing, but
Mm.
have, I think, long-standing tech stacks. Probably folks that are running marketing at a large, well-known national CPG brand inherited the technology they're using. They didn't choose it.
Almost certainly. Yeah.
There's multiple verticals, including the ones I mentioned, who, yeah, could come here, evaluate, pick Emarsys, and I wouldn't have trouble sleeping at night thinking that they could be in a in a bad situation, let's say, but rather the flip side of that. We're
Yeah.
purpose built. I think I've heard you say, Drew, at one point in time, we have some opinionated data architectures, but purposefully opinionated to meet the needs of specific marketers,
Hmm.
retail and e-com, sports and entertainment, folks that have transactional sales occurring. Our data architectures just consume that stuff natively, put it in the hands of a marketer, and man, the cool stuff that you can do just out of the box, it's impressive to me.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm impressed and surprised frequently. And I think you nailed it, right? I mean, we're in a similar boat to what you're saying where we wouldn't want the wrong client to get involved. I mean, we're a small boutique SI, right? So like I'm not in a position where someone signs on the dotted line and then I'm out the door and it's not my problem anymore. Even if it's not my problem personally, it's the problem of one of three people I work with every day and a lot, right? Like we are incentivized to go for repeat business and to get people who are going to be happy with what we suggest. So we're not just kind of going for recommending Emarsys in every instance because we want to be good partners to Emarsys. We do want to be good partners to Emarsys, but to us that means finding the right deals and actually creating successful scenarios, right? It's not just a question of getting the tech in there. It's a question of, like you said, putting people in a good place. It's extremely normal, natural. I might even use the word inevitable to not make a change when you don't have a reason to make a change. But when that pressure point comes along and you've got to, I think it's extremely important to, like you're saying, Joe, think through what your options are, right? You're going to have to do something no matter what. And there could be a lot of reasons, internal and or external, that you might. So when you do that, use that as an opportunity to put yourself in a better place. That's what we try to guide folks to do. I do have one more question. Are
Okay.
you a beard oil guy? What do you do? What's your routine?
Can you see? No, it's off camera.
Okay.
These are little tins of Joe Devine's personal beard balm
Oh, you
that
make it.
that I manufacture myself. And this
That's
is
hardcore.
not this is not your, bathtub beard balm. This is top of the line, high end, organic, sustainably sourced ingredients, nothing but the finest for this beard.
All right. That's impressive. I mean, I use local stuff. I keep it pretty natural, but I do not make my own. That is impressive. You are operating on a different level. And now the
I'm
world knows.
This is where I store all the ecom and MarTech prowess. You've got to keep
Oh,
it in top you got to keep it at a high level of performance.
I wasn't aware it was a data storage solution. That is pretty rad. That's good stuff. Joe,
It's
thank you
funny.
for doing this, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, anything else you want to say before I let you go?
No, I mean, well, maybe yes. I'm thankful for the opportunity. Um, it's always great to talk shop. Um, I hope, I mean, yes, biased. I work for Emarsys. But like I said, there's a reason I'm here. I'm a advocate of the platform, and I think our technology is strong. I've struggled, to be fair, in North America in my role to get people to pay attention. And if this discussion ultimately leads to one or two more people paying attention and taking some time out of their busy schedules to maybe think of an alternative like Emarsys, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And then, Drew, thank you for being such a great partner. And, I hope we get to do this again.
Yeah.
Maybe, a couple new topics, different topics. Happy to lean in and,
Love to, love to. Yeah, we're not unbiased either, right? Like we're looking to do work, but similar to you, like we put our biases on the table, and hopefully our biases align with people's genuine interests, right? We're not pretending to have come to this purely objectively, but we're trying to make an argument, make a case for something to consider. And again, if you're listening to this as a business and this isn't right for you, what we're describing, then we don't want you to have it, right? Like that's not the goal. The goal isn't to foist it on someone and, like you say, have them end up in a bad place. But if you're listening to this and somewhere in your brain you're like, oh, maybe this is an option, it's one we haven't considered, it's one perhaps we should consider, it's one that could put us in a better place,
yeah,
send us a message. This is
yeah,
probably posted on LinkedIn, so it's real easy to do so.
it's great.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Yes, sir. Have a good one.